All right, hello everyone. Today, this is week 4 of the 13-week fiscal program for American descendants of slavery. My name is Chief Biko. Today we have Chief Alligator, Chief Quietwater, Chief Acubalon, and Chief Blackcoat. Today I will start with the reading of the 12 steps of American descendants of slavery. And here we focus more so on the first letter of the acronym in ADOS, which is American. All right, number 1. Learn about the estate or estates your family originated from. Number 2, who established that estate? Number 3, what nation and confederacy had jurisdiction over that area prior to the European? Number 4, ask all nonprofit organizations you attend, what's your position on reparations? Number 5, they either support it or they don't. No support, no money. However, if they support it, then immediately children and adults need weekly classes free of charge about steps 1, 2, and 3, and field trips to ADOS landmarks in that city, county, and state. Number 6, don't support European holidays for the remainder of the 13-week time frame. Number 7, avoid spending money with any small businesses that doesn't hire your people, gas stations, nail salons, subways, etc. Number 8, all businesses need operating cash. Spend money with American businesses. Number 9, all other black, all other groups rely on our energy and operating cash to survive. Set the trend of making other groups follow our lead and support our clubs, services, products, and entertainment. Number 10, the US government is bankrupt. The Federal Reserve prints money in, i.e., quantitative easing. It also burns money, i.e., quantitative tightening. The US dollar hasn't been backed by gold since Richard Nixon in 1971, the Gold Standard Act. The government operates off the full faith of its citizens to pay debt and taxes. American descendants of slavery no longer have faith in the US government. This is why financial support will be altered, stopped, and redirected. Number 11, teach our kids 1 hour a day about their history on this land. A, have them learn about an American inventor. B, have them know about our heroes. C, they should know the European that conquered the estate you live in. D, they should know the nation of people prior to the European invasion, militarily and culturally. And number 12, practicing these steps will educate us on the land we're claiming America and attaches us to the history and laws of the US government. Every estate American descendants of slavery live in should have steps 1, 2, and 3 advertised via social media, radio, and newspapers. This in 13 weeks, one fiscal quarter will bring us together for our common cause. Next, we will have um, Chief Quietwater do the inventor.
Alrighty. So the inventor that I chose this week is Alexander Ashbourne. He was born in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania in 1820. He died in 1915. He actually has several patents. Three of them has to do with coconut oil. So he invented the patent for processing, preparing coconut oil for domestic use. The patent number is 163962, and he had invented that in, let me see, June 1st, 1875. He also patented treating coconut oil, patent number 194287, August 21, 1877, and then refining coconut oil, patent number 230518 in July 27th, 1880. And he also has a patent for the biscuit cutter, which the patent number for that is 170460. And he got the patent in November 30th, 1875. And that's it.
Thank you again, Chief Quietwater. Next, we'll have Chief Alligator read the Dr. Woodson quote.
Okay, Chief Alligator here. I'm going to start with the legal definitions and then do a Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote. First definition, American, a native of America. Second legal definition, descendants, one who follows in the bloodline of an ancestor, either lineally or collaterally. Third legal definition, slavery, a situation in which one person has absolute power over the life, fortune, and liberty of another. Fourth legal definition, prisoner of war, a person, usually a soldier, who is captured by or surrenders to the enemy in wartime. Fifth legal definition, school, any institution at which instruction is given in a particular discipline. And the sixth legal definition, education and enlightening experience. The Dr. Carter G. Woodson quote, I'm going to go down to the last one on our list of quotes. And we're going to do this one. Quote 13, the race has great possibilities. Properly awakened, the Negro can do the so-called impossible in the business world and thus help to govern rather than merely be governed. That's today's Dr. Carter G. Woodson.
Thank you, Chief Alligator. Chief Blackcoat, we're going to have read off the Maroon historical points.
Yes, sir. All right, 5 Maroon historical points. Number 1 was a person escaping slavery, seeking freedom, or breaking the law. Number 2, providing unity and a strong defense came first. Number 3, Maroon leaders were first and foremost military leaders. Number 4, Maroons established guerrilla warfare, planting sharp sticks and thick grass. Number 5, Maroons knew their European enemy, language, defense, and plans.
All right, excellent, excellent. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Last week we left off, believe in that third paragraph of the Militia Act. All right, can everybody see my screen pretty clearly? All right, excellent. I'm going to start here in the highlighted area and inflict penalties by sentence or judgment of the same on those who shall be subject thereto in any place within this province, which articles of war, when made as aforesaid, let me shrink this real quick, aforesaid shall be printed and distributed to the captains of the several companies, and then by distinctly read to their respective companies, and all and every captain, lieutenant, ensign, or other freeman who shall, after at least 3 days consideration of the said articles, voluntarily sign the same. Pretty much what I have here is pretty much just, again, they're just going over pretty much procedures, pretty much how everything is going to be laid out. It looks like pretty much once the articles of war are sent to the different tiers of their pretty much branches as far as their military structure goes, they're going to have everybody sign, read over it, and then they have the pretty much the option to sign it voluntarily or not if they want to be a part of the militia. Did anybody else have any thoughts on that?
I'll build on that. It looks like when you said, let's do the sentence right before that. It says inflict penalties by sentence or judgment of the same on those who shall be subject thereto in any place within the province. So it looks like they're coming under contract with each other, that basically wherever they rope you off in their province, right? Once they agree to their articles of war, Americans don't know that they've declared war, right? We don't know that. We don't speak European. So they've come together and they've created their own document, and they all within 3 days have to understand that when we rope these Americans off, we're going to bring them into our jurisdiction. And then this is when we hear about slave codes and all these different laws, now they've brought us under their jurisdiction so they can start finding us guilty under their legal construct as such. That's what I would add to that.
Gotcha. No, that makes perfect sense. Makes perfect sense. Let's see, Chief Quiet Water had any thoughts on that?
I'm kind of reading over it again.
Gotcha. And
I'll
y'all
go
feel,
ahead and say
about to
something
say, feel
there.
free to jump in.
Yeah, I think Chief Alligator said, we don't speak the European language. So during this time, as they're putting this article together, they gave the natives 3 days to pretty much have an understanding of what's about to go on, or 3 days to pretty much, understand that they're about to fall up under the European jurisdiction. I think you pointed out, printed and distributed the captains of several companies and them distinctly reading the respective companies. So yeah, they pretty much laid out their structure too. We're gonna go from the captain, lieutenant, ensign, and then to the freeman. So I think Chief Alligator pretty much explained it well though.
Yeah, I agree.
Agreed.
Agreed. Perfect. I'll go ahead and continue here. Starting here. In the presence of one justice of peace, acknowledging his having pursued or heard the same distinctly read, and that he has well considered thereof and is willing to be bound and governed thereby, and promises obedience thereto and to his officers accordingly, shall thenceforth be deemed well and duty bound to the observance of the said articles, and to the duties thereby required, and subject to the pains, penalties, punishments, and forfeitures that may therein be appointed for disobedience and other offenses. So in this last sentence here, it's pretty much saying like once you've signed this, once you've read over it, and pretty much acknowledged it from the European side, that anything read within these articles of war that you pretty much go against, then you are subject to any of the penalties that come with it. That's pretty much what I got from this last section here.
Yeah, and as you read it, I'm thinking to myself, I understand they had an agent that was pretty much their translator. Every, tribe or nation pretty much had one allotted. With that, this was just, to me, this feels like a state of confusion. They were writing up what they wanted, and they were going to present it to a group of people that have no idea what they're getting themselves into. So yeah, this was probably a very ugly, and I understand what's going on right now, but if they had to present this to the Native Americans, then yeah, this was causing so much confusion.
It's kind of like they rushed and kind of forced it down their throat without them really understanding exactly what was going on.
I'm gonna interject something. I could be wrong. I'm not interpreting this as if they're presenting this document to the Americans. I'm interpreting this as this is Europeans coming together under their Militia Act to say, hey, we're going to go to war against these Americans. So in that first sentence where it says, in that first sentence when it says, in the presence of one justice of the peace, to me, that sounds like in today's time, a witness, like when you're getting a notarized document signed.
Correct. I was going to say like a notary.
Right. But what these Europeans did was they had one of their quote unquote justices of the peace.
Okay.
They basically made them take a charge by signing the document, because if you do not, and where it says, and subject to the pains, penalties, punishments, and forfeitures. So if you don't penalize these Americans as we catch them and bring them in our jurisdiction, then we have your signature, and then we'll turn around and we'll charge you.
Okay.
So they already
got you.
At this point, they already had their jurisdiction. So now they're talking to their other counterparts, pretty much, laying the law down to them, saying, hey, someone come across this path, they're subject to the rules or the penalties. That's what's going on right now? So they already created their little entity, and now they're saying, hey, this is how we're going to go about it.
They're establishing their stuff.
Right. So I don't know if you want to explain to Chief Biko. So basically, Europeans are still in the construction stage. They've got the militia. Their government structure has given them the go ahead to have a militia. Now what they're doing is they're getting on code and coming to agreement that when we rope Americans off and bring them in our said providence, how are we going to penalize them? And
Okay.
this is real powerful, because what we think is racism in the court system today, these officers of the court are under a charge. Right? And a charge is just a responsibility. Yeah, they're under a charge, and it started here. Because let's say I got roped off and they bring me into their jurisdiction. Well, one of those officers of their court, they already understand I got to be penalized, whether I'm innocent or not.
So it's basically bringing them under their umbrella of ruling, basically, and laws. Okay.
Correct.
Got you.
Correct.
And like it was like a trap to get them to sign it, so that as soon as they sign it, they basically are, like y'all just said, under the same. It's like once they signed it, they were agreeing to be a part of these rules.
Yeah, because what I'm getting here too is like this is for, like Chief Alligator said, for the European. So when it says like these pains, penalties, punishments for disobedience, they're talking to the European that signed these articles of war. So they're saying like you signed up to defend this province, this area, this county, and if you are found that you aren't doing so, then pretty much actions will be taken on you. So I think this is just strictly towards the European and them pretty much getting everything in order for themselves as far as like defending these areas of land that they're claiming to be theirs.
Yeah.
Let me see.
And that's powerful, Chief Biko, because that also shows us what we should do within our own group, right? Because what they're really saying is you're no better than we are, right? If we're going to pick up guns and we're going to patrol or protect a certain area of land in America, then when we bring people to you, you better do what you signed that you said you're going to do. And so it sounds like this is a page that we as a group of people, we have to give our people that same charge, right? You don't get a pass to sell out, basically, and there's penalties for selling out.
Correct. No, that makes a good point. Great point. Also like that, it takes a village to raise a child type of mentality. Like if we're all in here together, if you're found that you're not doing something, you got to be dealt with. So yeah, I think we definitely is something that we as a people can take heed to and pretty much incorporate as we go forward. I'll go ahead and read this first one here. I believe this is like pretty much their requirements. Provided always that the articles so to be made and established shall contain nothing repugnant or repugnant, but be as near as possible conformable to the military laws of Great Britain and to the articles of war made and established by His Majesty. So here again, this pretty much first sentence to me just automatically recertifies that these Europeans aren't the Americans, since they are pretty much right here conformable to the military laws of Great Britain, not America.
Right.
To His
Like they
Majesty.
would just copying a playbook too.
Correct. Copying whatever they learned from their monarchy system. His Majesty would be, of course, the king. We know there's never been like a king here in America as far as, you know, the natives go. So this in itself just tells us that these people who are now claiming to be the Americans aren't the Americans. Their ancestors were never American.
And they're basically just taking everything from what they knew as far as the military laws of Great Britain and just incorporated everything here on this land, and people went for it.
That's probably were doing the stuff that were like when the they probably got these from those times when people, I think they were soldiers, they could just come and stay in your house, like you couldn't deny them or something like that. I forgot what that was called, but I remember that learning that in school.
That's in the Bill of Rights. I think
I think it's the Ordering Act
number 3 or something.
Yeah, I think that's what it's called.
If I could, if I can add in one thing, if you could highlight that sentence again, Chief Biko. Those of us that play chess, this is a great opportunity to look at how Great Britain conquers We know that the king is the most powerful piece on the board, but the king never stands free. We got a little feedback coming in. Am I
Yeah,
clear?
say that one more time, Chief Alligator.
Okay. Just this piece right here that's highlighted.
Mhm.
What I'm noticing is on these treaties that we're going to read, there's never the king or queen out of Europe signing the documents. So if we think about a chess game, the king or the queen always send their knight, which would be their military officer, to contract. And so what I'm taking from this is we should reverse engineer that, which is what we talked about last week. We should have our knight contract with any other group of people. It's almost like if you get a sales representative from another company. That sales representative wants to talk to the owner.
Right.
Right. But if you have a structure in place, then that sales rep will talk to your sales rep. And so what happened in America is you got these knights or these military generals coming from Europe, and they're getting direct access to chiefs. And they should have never been face to face with a chief. There should have been somebody from the military on the American side corresponding with that general coming from Europe. Y'all with me?
Right.
Like the what is it called? The executive office. You have your chief
checks and balances.
CEO. Exactly, checks and balances. You anytime somebody calling to complain something, they're not going to reach the CEO. They're going to speak to their executive office, and they're going to pretty much handle the issue. So, no, that's a great point. That's a great point.
Like checks and balances, yeah.
If you can add on that, Black Coat, can you add on that how the military a lot of time gets in the room with other nations' leaders when had that other nation had the proper structure, military should be corresponding with military, not one group of military being able to get in the room with the whatever title they use on that land, chief, king, whatever. Can you talk about that a little bit?
I mean, if we're looking at it from a military standpoint, yeah, I think we might have spoke about it recently about colonels talk to colonels, lieutenants talk to lieutenants. You know, you don't go below your structure or below, you stay within your jurisdiction or whoever you're commissioned to. Other than that, yeah, that sentence was just pretty much seeing them follow their guidelines from Great Britain, you know, over here on America's turf. But eventually they're gonna try to adapt some new ways.
Let me ask it a different way. How is it that the United States government military can actually do negotiations with other leaders? How does the military of the United States government get in the room with leaders of other nations?
They send their knights. You send your knights and you go talk to them. Whatever conflict is about to happen or proposed to happen, yeah. You said it, Chief Alligator. You're gonna send your knights. Your king. If we're looking at that chessboard, your king and queen won't go anywhere. They're gonna, you know, pass that information down. And you never gonna get to that back. You know, but yeah, if you're posing that question, how do countries exchange information through their military and through their military leaders as well, not just, you know, your lawyer, just your enlisted or your officers. It definitely is a structure to it.
That's a great point, though. That's a great point.
And I think this goes back to the last paragraph, how you were saying we gotta get on that type of time too. You know, we can't have running backs and preachers coming to our
entertainers and rappers and things of that nature.
Exactly. That's exactly where I was going with that. How because we don't have a defense, we got the wrong people in the room.
Having these discussions. And I think even with that too, like when you're having your military, your warriors, your armed forces in these rooms, that's kind of empowering them as well. Because now it's like, you got to get through me before you even talk to big dog. Because I'm going to translate everything you say. And if we ain't on the same page, he going to listen to me. So it's instead of it like, well, okay, you'll talk to the president, the king, whatever it is. And then they making decisions. Now you just feel like you're a pawn when you're really the knight, when you're supposed to be the one
Right.
having those conversations with other knights or
Yeah.
whoever's trying to have a conversation with your leaders at that point. So I think,
Mhm.
having that established also empowers everybody in their roles, so they don't feel like they're just a cog in the system, but a vital part of the system.
It just really puts things in its proper perspective.
Hmm. Definitely.
If we could use the analogy of a dog, let's just say two Doberman pinchers.
Mhm.
Those two Doberman pinchers have to move around each other with respect. And I'm using that example as if you got two different nations of people and they have their military as the liaison between the chief or the king or queen from those other nations, those two Dobermans, they're going to want to work something out because they really don't want to fight each other because they know one's going to lose their life, right? Versus having that preacher in the room with a dog, the dog's going to eat them up every time.
Every time, and it's purposely to be that way. You're not
Mm.
supposed to win these battles.
Yeah.
Well, we just haven't got on into the right structure yet. Maybe.
No, that makes sense. That makes sense. Who are they allowing to even, I guess, speak for us?
Right.
Type of thing. Yeah.
Right, because the so-called white supremacist, he doesn't hold any weight with the alpha American, quote unquote, black Negro color. He can be racist all he wants. He's not scaring the alpha. And that
Correct.
that racist European knows that. So he's gonna watch his mouth because he knows, you know what? I gotta bring ass to whoop this ass.
Hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
It hits different when they know that there's a price to pay. And so now the negotiations are going to be on a higher frequency. Whereas if you got somebody in there talking about morality and all this and that, yeah, there's morality, but not when it's wartime.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. I'll finish off this first paragraph here. In pursuance of the last act of Parliament for punishing mutiny and desertion, the different circumstances of this province compared with Great Britain and of voluntary militia of freemen compared with mercenary standing troops being duly weighed and maturely considered. Okay. So this here, in pursuance of the last act of Parliament for punishing mutiny and desertion, the different circumstances of this province compared with Great Britain and of a voluntary militia of freemen compared with mercenary standing troops being duly weighed and maturely considered. I think what I'm grasping here is the punishment for mutiny and desertion will be different for the voluntary militiamen than it would be for a regular standing army, and that they're pretty much just considering or they're taking that into account when, I guess, making their rulings on how they'll deal with said person who signed the articles of war for the militia. Y'all let me know if that's what y'all getting from this one.
Sounds like they're trying to figure out how they're gonna punish the people not with the plan, or whoever came on, on the boat. If you volunteered to pretty much protect what's trying to happen, it sounds like, they're trying to figure out what's the proper way to punish this group of people, or what's the proper way to punish the voluntary militias.
Mm.
That's what I got from it.
Correct. And it looks like they're going to be, like they say, being duly weighed. So they're looking at, we're looking at voluntary militia of free men versus our mercenary standing troops, which would be like your super warlords, right? Let's just say, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Chief Blackcoat, like a mercenary standing troop would probably be like maybe a clique of 10 or 20, and they just go on suicide missions.
Right, mercenary standing troops, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, of the middle.
So they're duly weighing them, and they're saying, you know what? They don't really say that they're going to show any preference either way. It looks like they're going to, the fact that they put them on the scale looks like they're gonna judge both accordingly. Like mutiny is mutiny, desertion is desertion.
Okay.
You look up the exact definition of unity.
Okay.
Here with mercenary standing troops, yeah. Looks like they may be comparing the two.
Okay, so yeah.
It's like they're kind of learning as they go with everything. Just trying to see what works best for them compared with Great Britain because they're on new land.
Right. And they're looking at their parents because Great Britain is their parent, right?
Right.
And
right.
you can't forget that they were exodus out of Europe.
Yep.
And so we got to remember that they had nowhere to go.
Right.
So it was either fight or die or become extinct. And so prisoners of war, our group, you know, we're kind of in that place too. We can't go to Africa. Everybody claims what nation in Africa has made a worldwide declaration that they're going to have our back. So we're kind of in the same boat that these pilgrims slash peasants were.
Right.
They couldn't go back to Europe
because they really don't know at this point what's going to work. And like you said, that's why they're weighing it on the scale.
Yeah, reading that last one, they didn't even know if they could go back. I don't think they told them you're not coming back. So when they got over here, it seemed like they already had a think tank going before they even pushed out all their peasants and, you know, less fortunate. So, or the crowded, you know, any ones that was crowded in the streets. It sounds like they had already brainstormed this, built it up, pushed them out. And now, you know, like you said, they're figuring it out. Yeah.
Right.
Like you're going to grab a gun, you're going to either fight and defend what we're trying to create over here, United States, or, you know, we're going to punish you with it. It sounds like it probably was like,
that makes sense.
Okay.
Right.
No reinforcements coming over from the pond. So yeah, I see where it's we're going to weigh you accordingly. We're going to weigh you the same as you would be for a mercenary. Okay. What's your thoughts?
And they had a plan, but it's like they're on new land, and it's like we're gonna try this and see if this works. And that's exactly what they did. They enforced it, and yeah.
Can I ask a question? Can somebody look up the definition of pilgrim? Pilgrim and peasant. If somebody can look up the definition of pilgrim and peasant, because what we're taught is that pilgrims came over here first. So how can the pilgrim become the American?
Right.
That's the first. And the second point is, let's find out what a pilgrim is, because I believe a pilgrim is a wanderer, basically like a homeless person.
Wow.
Right here on Google said, I think, a wanderer, homeless person, or it can tie into that because a group of English people who came to America seeking religious freedom during a reign of kings and queens, or during the reign of King James. So pretty much the pilgrim was the person coming over on the Mayflower, but like you said, how can the pilgrim be the American?
Right. Wow.
Yeah, you're a wanderer.
I mean, there's no confusion about this at all. Like, it's
you break it down,
literally in black and white.
So apparently, after 2 attempts to leave England and move to Holland, a separatist group was finally relocated to Amsterdam, and they stayed for, okay, that doesn't matter.
And the reason why I'm asking what the definition is because they did not finance the trip to America. So if that's the case, they were indigent or they were paupers, which those are English words, but basically you're poor. So it's not like they bought a boat.
You're saying, right, they didn't pay for their way to come over.
Right, they were kicked out of Europe. We don't, we want to, let's say you want to raise your society to a higher frequency. Then you got to get rid of your unwanted.
Right.
Yeah.
And a peasant is, my bad.
No, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say a peasant, a poor farmer or low social status who owns and rents small pieces or small spaces. So
that's basically interchangeable.
Yeah.
Right. Who owns and rents small spaces of land. All of the images are what they are. I don't see a black peasant here.
Were you sharing something, Chief Akiba?
I'm really just agreeing with what y'all say. some of this stuff y'all have a better understanding, so I'm just listening really.
Let me see here. Did anybody want to pick up on the next paragraph provided also?
Yeah, I got you.
All right.
Down because I got my thing in the way. All right, could you scroll it down for me just a little bit? It's up, well, up, my bad, yeah, up. It's running into my screen. All right, boom. Provided also that nothing in this act shall be understood or considered to give any power or authority to the governor or commander in chief and the said officers to make any articles or rules that shall in the least affect those of the inhabitants of the province who are consistently or consistently
Conscientiously. Mhm.
Scrupulous. I always fuck this word up.
Scrupulous.
Scrupulous. What does that mean? Like a group, or what does scrupulous mean?
If someone can look that up while we're breaking down
Right.
what he read. And,
Scrupulous of bearing arms, either in their liberties, persons, or estates, nor any other persons of what
persuasion
or denomination soever, who have not first voluntarily and freely signed the said articles after due consideration and aforesaid. Read a lot right there. Scrupulous. So
Scrupulous means basically diligent, thorough, and extremely attentive to details.
okay, so especially scrupulous of bearing arms. And nothing is actually be understood. I think what it's saying here goes back to what Chief Quietwater was saying, as they're figuring this out as they go. That nothing in this act shall be understood or construed to give any power or authority to the governor or commander in chief and the said officers. It's kind of like they're just saying, weigh it out. We're gonna see who's gonna be where. We're gonna see who's gonna fit in what piece. We're gonna, appoint your leaders and your chiefs or whoever your officers, as they get to this new world. That's what I'm gonna take from that.
Okay, I'll help you out, Chief Blackcoat. If you could highlight that first sentence, Chief Pico, and stop at officers. I'm sorry, that first comma, second comma, if you could stop at officers. Boom. So these three people they don't have any power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Nothing in this act shall be understood or construed to give any power or authority to the governor, commander in chief, and the said officers, right? So those, so those officers of the militia don't have any power. The commander in chief doesn't have any power, and the governor doesn't have any power to do what?
Make any changes to the articles?
To make people who are conscientiously scrupulous of bearing arms. You don't have any power to make them people bear arms, right? You don't have the power to infringe on their liberties, their persons or estates, nor any other person of what persuasion or denomination soever. So basically, those that contract with us under these articles of war, we can weigh you on the scale when it's wartime. Everybody else, the governor, the commander in chief, you don't have power to go knock on somebody's door that didn't sign the articles of war and say, hey, you got to go pick up a gun.
Correct.
That's what I'm taking. Y'all can
definitely. That's it.
That's what it seems to be saying.
Yeah, they're not able to pretty much enact would it be like a state of emergency, something like that along the lines. When it says like commander in chief, you're not able to just say, okay, whatever I say goes, this is what we need to happen. They don't have that power at this time.
It's really like they're just, my bad.
No, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it's literally just like they don't have they don't have any type of checks and balances right now. Like everything that they're doing is not just an executive order, but it's just what the military wants and what like the people, the colonizers wants. Like there's no type of, okay, if we want to do this, can we do this? Like they're not checking within each other. It's kind of just like one group one group doing everything and everybody else just reacting to it.
All right, just rolling it out, rolling with it.
Right.
Right. So Chief Akibalon, what you're really saying is the militia, the people have the power.
Yeah, because if the commander in chief can't do anything, that's basically saying the president doesn't have a say in anything.
Right.
Correct. I think to where it's and them still referring to, Europe as pretty much who they need to get everything signed off by.
Mm-hmm.
I think they did that specifically because that's probably who was not even probably, but being that they came from like a place with kings and queens, the people probably had no say, so they probably made sure that they had say in everything this time.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of having it how it was that like when they were at home.
Yeah, trying to slowly add those differences from
So when they
Great
do,
Britain.
right? So when they do
Right.
get to America, they can act as if they have free thought and freedom of choice.
Right.
It's basically like they just took the contract that they had in Great Britain and just substituted each word that said king and said, this is going to be us this time. And y'all can't do anything or y'all can't change this without our permission.
Okay.
Correct. And Chief Akibalon, what's powerful about what you just said is we're in that same situation right now in 2020.
Right.
Where we have to come to the realization that there's nowhere for us to run. We're going to have to form like Voltron and protect ourselves, because that's what the European realized we got in North America. We can't go back to Europe.
Right.
They couldn't get back on a boat and go back to Europe, so they got to survive. So I always give them kudos for that, because they could not retreat.
Right.
And it's not like you can give them kudos, but again, they couldn't retreat. So when I'm thinking in my mind, we go over definitions. It was kind of like they were prisoners of war in their own country, in a way. Now that they're coming over here, it's kind of like I'm free. But
it's just like revenge, just not on the people. They can't get their revenge on the people that did it, so they're taking it out on somebody else.
Right.
Correct.
Powerful point. That's exactly what's going on. They're treating us like they were treated in Europe.
Correct. It's what is it? A learned behavior.
Right.
Learned behavior. I'm gonna do what my parents did to you. Pretty
exactly.
Much.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out Chief Alligator Mike right now. I think it's picking up everybody's sounds. So if we want to just try
to mute it,
mute just everybody.
It's a lot of
you don't talk, just mute your mic.
Definitely.
Okay.
Chip in the shine.
Let's see. I think we pretty much finished off that paragraph. Did you want to continue, Chief Blackcoat?
I got you.
All right.
Provided also that no youth under the age of 21 years, nor any bought servant or intended apprentice should be admitted to enroll himself or be capable of being enrolled in the said companies or regiments without the consent of his or their parents or guardians, masters or mistress, in writing under their hands first had and obtained. It sounds like no one under the age of 21 can pretty much join the militias or pick up and bear arms unless they had the permission from their guardian, pretty much.
And nobody that was a slave, because no bought servant or indented apprentice. That's the same thing as an indentured servant, I guess. Indentured servant.
Okay. And correct, yep. So when they say who, nor any bought servant or indented apprentice. Indentured servant, indentured apprentice.
Yeah, it just sounds like the same word, because I know an indentured servant is a servant that I think let me look up the word.
And they have to pay off a debt.
Right. They had to pay off on the debt.
Right. I was thinking the opposite. They would get paid, but now they were paying off a debt. Then could be free, probably.
It says an indentured indented apprentice means an employee who is serving a period of training under an indenture for the purpose of rendering him to be fit as a qualified worker in whatever industry.
So basically just an internship.
And so just to add on that, y'all, that's something that our community has lost over this last 50 years. Anytime you have a skill, whether it be soldier all the way to a welder, when you come fresh out of school, you are an apprentice. You can speak the language, but you don't know how to do anything.
Right.
And then the next stage will be craftsman, and then the next stage will be master, right? Typically, it takes 10 years to become a master, right? So that's where this language comes from. But if I go to this first sentence, provided also that no youth under the age of 21 years, nor any bought servant or indented apprentice, shall be admitted to enroll himself. So if you're less than 21, you can't enroll in the militia. And if you are a servant, meaning somebody else is liable for you, you can't sign up in the militia, because if you get killed, the person who's financing you, right? When you're an indentured servant, you got to pay that debt back. So what they're saying is, if I got Chief Blackcoat as an indentured, if I bought Chief Blackcoat a car and he didn't pay me back, under the old terms, you got to work that debt off.
No matter what.
So while you working that debt off, you can't join the militia because you got to pay me. That's what
it's still indent from back.
And probably we're using that as an escape, probably.
From Europe, so people fresh off the boat from Europe, they couldn't join the militia. You got to pay that debt off to the king or the queen first.
That sounds more like your pilgrims.
Exactly. So you had to be on the land maybe 7 years. This is just a term for y'all to remember. The old world, before the Revolutionary War, the old world, you could not keep a person in bondage more than 7 years.
Yeah, there's a lot more that goes into that paragraph, because just the way Chief Alligator explained it. Now I'm thinking about all these other people that came to the land as servants, you know, still from you before. Like, so yeah, that's a powerful.
Their service probably was to come and explore and conquer the land, and that's probably how they. By the time they got it set up, they probably were like, "Okay, you paid it off, and just set up the business now. And now that you set up the business, you're good." Because everybody's in contracts and everything, and it's ever since they came, everything was just contracted. It got to a point where everything was just in paper, and those papers probably were just set up for when the other people came from Europe that weren't servants.
Right. And so what Chief of People just said is really the language of business is accounting. And so what they were doing was accounting for every person that owed money via contract. Here's a contract for you. Remember, they're broke. They don't have anything. So they're watching every penny. And so by watching every penny, they're contracting you. Okay, I got you for 7 years. So you may work slave patrol for 7 years. I'll give you housing, I'll give you food, but that's your job detail until you get your freedom papers. Now, where they flipped the script is after the Revolutionary War, they came up with chattel slavery, which means permanent debt. There is no working it off.
Right.
You understand?
Basically bondage until you die.
Right. And so if you got caught in their jurisdiction and they sentenced you to slavery, there was no more 7-year term of indentured servant. They made you perpetual in debt. And you're, just throwing that in.
That makes sense. And then just thinking about how they had to have this signed off by the majesty just goes into telling like, yeah, we'll send over some people, but like we're sending over these servants, indentured people that are on these charters that are under contract. So they can't help you anyway. So y'all gonna have to still figure it out. But we'll go ahead and sign off. So they still getting big brother by pretty much where they come from, which is Great Britain.
I'll do this paragraph.
Okay.
Provided also that no enlistment or enrollment of any person in any of the companies or regiments to be formed. Somebody echoing.
My bad.
Let me start over. provided also that no enlistment or enrollment of any person in any of the companies or regiments to be formed and raised as aforesaid shall protect such person in any suit or civil action brought against him by his creditors or others. And so we were just talking about that in the paragraph before. Yeah, if somebody's in debt to somebody, you can't use the militia to stop that person from saying, hey, you had no business being a part of the militia.
Right,
You got to pay me back first.
right. Wow.
Anybody else want to build on that?
It just goes back to what we were
Pretty
saying in
short.
the previous paragraph. You're right. Like, yeah, you need to pay us before you can move any further, basically.
It's bringing me to the question of who's the owner of these indentured servants or apprentices, and who are they paying back? Like, I'm just trying to
Great
understand.
Britain, right?
think that's
I was
what she's
thinking
saying.
the
What was the
king.
crime, or like, what was their crime for them to? Because it sounds like they're being blackmailed. Now it's like, you owe me, so go take your ass to America, build up some shit.
Well, because isn't it because they let them out of their jails and everything over there? And they had to basically finish off their
Okay.
sentence here
Yeah,
on this land.
what are they serving? But okay, yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense there, Chief Quietwater. Like, hey, we'll either you want to stay in this prison or you go over
Mhm.
here and
I don't think
build or
it
do
was just
whatever we're telling you to finish off your thing. Now you don't know where you're going, but hey, it's either this
still
or that.
right.
Hmm.
Still got 6 years.
Right.
Yes.
That's gonna help with the land. I got you.
And we
Right.
really don't want to get into detail about Europe's structure. That's where Moors would come in, right? All
That's
we're
what we
concerned
talking.
with- yeah, all we're concerned with as Americans is they came over here. That's all we concerned with. You're not American. We're very clear. You're lying when you say you're American. You were sent over here as indentured servants, right? So the military ropes off an area first, right? Then George Washington was a general of the military. So all these people on the money, or not money, but the fiat currency under this government, they were generals, except for Lincoln. So first thing military does is what? Secure the land, right? Once they secure an area of land, then they go back to the king and say, okay, send us some peasants over so they can do the work. That's what we talk about. So I'll finish this second half of this sentence. Except during his being in actual service in field or garrison, nor from a prosecution for any offense committed against the laws of this province. So, in summary, no enlistment or enrollment of any person in any of the companies or regiments to be formed and raised as aforesaid shall protect such person. So you're not going to be protected except during his being in actual service in field or garrison. So if you're active fighting with the militia or the military, you're not liable. You're not like, that's the only exception. Nor from prosecution for any offense committed against the laws of this province. So if you're in action in the field, which means if you're on the battlefield, or if you're at a garrison, which you broke the definition of that down a couple of weeks ago, Chief Blackcoat, then that's the only exception to you being liable.
And it's saying if you're defending what we're trying to get done, you're not liable. But if you're trying to go against the militias that pretty much are holding you to your campground or wherever you were stationed, that's not happening. Like, you can't go against the militia, but you can go against the Americans. You can plus up the militia and fight the Americans, but you can't go against the militia. Like, they couldn't escape their bondage to, whatever they were appointed to as far as their punishment or whatever.
No,
I'm just trying to understand.
Okay, so keep in mind the American is the enemy. So this contract is between Europeans. And so what they're saying is, just because you join a company or regiment to be formed and raised as aforesaid, shall protect such person in any suit or civil action. That's not going to protect you. That's what they're telling the European. This is amongst just because you join a company or regiment, you still not protected from civil suit.
Still not pretty. I got it. Be quiet. What is wrong with you now? What did I say?
Except during his being in actual service in field or garrison. That's the only exception. So if you're actually on the battlefield shooting rounds, or if you're in the fort holding it down, you're exempt. Other than that, just because you join this militia, that doesn't mean that
Right, I got you now.
another European can't say, hey, you still owe me $3,000.
Right, just because you helped out.
Anybody else want to build on that?
I think y'all hit the nail on the head right there.
All right, I'll push this last paragraph through. So provided also that no regiment, company, or party of volunteers shall, by virtue of this act, be compelled or led more than 3 days' march beyond the inhabited parts of the province. So basically now they're putting in their, what's the word I'm looking for? The range around the area that they're military occupying, because when they call it a province, it's because they got military boundaries, they got their militia boundary, right? It's protected. So they're saying you can't go no more than 3 days out from our province, right? And that sounds like a defense mechanism, because if they need to go get you, they know that you're only 3 days out at most. Y'all can build on that before I continue reading.
I was gonna say it also say inhabited parts, so it seems like some of the parts that they are claiming to be pretty much within their territory aren't. When I think inhabited, they're probably talking about the Europeans, because it might be the actual Americans in some of those. I'm pretty much sure it's Americans within that province that they're claiming to be their territory.
Exactly.
So they're pretty much making note like, hey, you go outside this part, whoever's inhabiting this area, those aren't Europeans. Those aren't, who we consider us to be, pretty much. So outside of these inhabited parts that we can say, okay, this is a European, this is so and so. Yeah, we don't have any jurisdiction, or we're not coming to, like you said, get you if you're behind enemy lines.
Okay. Anybody else? Okay. And then I'll push through this last part where it says, nor detained longer than 3 weeks in any garrison without an express engagement for that purpose, first voluntarily entered into and subscribed by every man, so to march or remain in garrison. This act to continue in force until the 13th day of October next and no longer. So provided also that no regiment, company, or party of volunteers shall, by the virtue of this act, be compelled or led more than 3 days beyond the inhabited parts of the province, nor detained longer than 3 weeks in any garrison without an express engagement for that purpose, first voluntarily entered into and subscribed by every man, so to march or remain in garrison. So you're going to have some type of expression, whether verbally or written, if they're going to go further than 3 days out, or if they're going to detain somebody in a garrison for more than 3 weeks. Anybody else want to build on that?
I was gonna say that kind of probably comes from that checks and balances thing, like they have to have that expressed, I guess, engagement from like an officer or colonel, lieutenant, or somebody like that. I'm pretty sure it just won't be any regular enlistment person saying, I'm gonna stay here for another 2 weeks, because I think they have to get that checked off by whoever their upline or up chain is, because then you'll just have everybody in on these garrisons not paying back their debtors or anything like that.
And it seems like they're being heavily monitored as well, in regards to how far, like it said in the sentence before, how far they can go out, because of what could possibly happen if they did go outside those said boundaries, basically.
Anybody else, or we good on that?
Good.
I think we're good.
Okay, now we're at the hour mark. We're going to go a little bit over because we're at the end of the Militia Act. Chief Biko, do you have the Constitution of the United States and the Bill of Rights?
Yes, I do. Give me one moment. Go ahead and stop sharing.
If we could pull up the Constitution first. And the only reason why we want to run a little bit over today, because we want to tie in why we read the Militia Act of 1755, because we're proving that we're prisoners of war and that we're under military occupation. What the so-called Black, Negro, Afro-American, colored, person of color, or minority calls racism is actually military occupation. If you go down to Article 2, Section 2.
All right, Article 2, Section 2.
Article, that's the first article.
Oh, Article 1.
No, you good.
We had here. Do.
Okay.
Section 2. Okay, here we go.
So somebody want to read the first okay, you don't have to read the whole section. You can stop at read the first half of that paragraph, somebody, if you don't mind, or Chief Biko.
I'll go ahead. Section 2. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militia of the several states when
Right there.
called
That's
into.
it.
Okay.
That's it. That's it. Is everybody clear on that? Who has control of the militia in 2021?
Commander-in-chief, president.
Now, the reason why, and this is Article 2, Section 2 for the record, for those that are watching around the world when we upload this video. Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution clearly says that the president / commander-in-chief is in control of the militia. That's important because when Donald Trump and Joe Biden had their only debate for the presidential election in 2020, when Donald Trump told the militia to stand down and stand by, prisoners of war thought he was racist. Was he being racist or was he adhering to procedure per the Constitution?
Adhering to procedure. And just a side note, I believe we were still underneath that state of emergency as well. So that just turned him from president to commander-in-chief as well.
So we're all clear on that when he told the militia to stand down and stand by, we know now who tells the militia to come out on the streets.
Commander-in-chief.
So January 6, 2021, how did they get there? How would they get there? We're just gonna leave that right there. We dealing with proof of claim. We ain't guessing.
We know they held he himself held a little rally outside of it.
Mhm.
So they were following procedure. If we go from what we just read in the Militia Act to this section here, they were called upon by the commander-in-chief and the president, and they followed their duty.
He's the only one. He's the only one that can activate him.
Mhm.
He's the only one that can pick up the phone and say, "Yo, we got a little problem that I need y'all to handle. I'll give you orders. I'll give a call back 1600 hours and I'll let you know." That's how that works. Now, if we can go to the Bill of Rights.
Back out of here. Pull it up.
And all we're doing is just connecting the dots at this point. We've laid the foundation with the 1755 Militia Act. And so now we're just providing proof of claim that we're under military occupation. This is not racism.
All right, let's get it here. Boom.
Okay, go to the Second Amendment. Okay, can you read the Second Amendment?
Amendment 2. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed.
Okay, now that we read the 1755 Militia Act and we just read Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, so we know the president is the only person that can activate the militia. Now when we go to the Second Amendment under the Bill of Rights, who has the right to bear arms? Now that you have an overstanding and you've read the Militia Act, you understand who controls the militia. And when you look at the Second Amendment for the Bill of Rights, who has the right to bear arms? The people or the militia?
A well-regulated militia.
Militia.
Anybody else? Chief Black?
Yeah, yeah, it's definitely the militias. The militias have the right to bear arm. That just takes me all the way back to the First Amendment, though. The freedom of speech. If this one doesn't apply to us, then it voids all of them. But yeah, a well-regulated militia being necessary to the Secretary of Free State, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Not talking about your inhabitants, not talking about your freedmen, it say it right there.
But we have to understand, and that's why we read the Militia Act.
I understand.
Right, so we can get a clear understanding of who they're referring to. So what they're really saying is, if the militia were to rope off a particular city and start going door to door, the only people that they're not going to take weapons from is who? The militia.
Militia.
Now, the nail in the coffin or the cherry on top, can you pull up the Georgia militia map, Chief Biko?
Now, when I pull it up, for some reason, it's not giving me the state, but I know if I click in certain areas.
Okay, scroll down a little bit. Click on that second question mark down there.
This one.
Yep.
Okay, here we go.
Now, let's just look at this map.
All the counties in Georgia.
All the counties. Now, pick a county. What county you want to do? The first capital and the state of Georgia. Click on Chatham.
Let's go here. You said Chatham.
Yeah. Just click on.
Wow.
Okay.
Yep.
Now, underneath that county is what? Militia districts. We're under military occupation. So what does that look like? That means that if a riot were to break out, you see Savannah is District 7. So let's say a riot breaks out. Now let's look at their pecking order. So a riot breaks out and the police can't handle it, right? So the chief of police is over the police department. So the chief of police calls the governor and say, hey, I got a problem in Chatham County. And the governor says, okay, you're in Chatham County. He's looking at a map just like we're looking at, but he's not thinking Chatham County. He's thinking he's looking at Chatham County as well. Now that governor gets on the phone with the commander-in-chief, AKA the president, and says, hey, we got a problem down here in Chatham County. The police can't handle it, and our National Guard of 1,000 men can't handle it. Just keeping you abreast of the situation. The president then pulls up this map. And when he pulls up this map, he's not thinking Chatham County. He's looking at what militia do I have in that area? So he's going to make a phone call to District 7. He's going to call that warlord and say, hey, I need you to get your boys, and I need y'all to go down there. We got a problem. Our militarized police can't handle it. National Guard can't handle it. And before I deploy one of my military branches, I want to go ahead and activate the people. And so what we've done, y'all, is we've just proved we are under military occupation. You can do a Google search of whatever state you live in and pull up militia districts. There are sleeper cells in your county. If you go back one page, Chief Biko. Okay, this is what you think the state of Georgia is, counties. This is how we're programmed to think, that all these different counties make up the state of Georgia. Click on Chatham again, Chief Biko. Underneath that county is the ground floor of their operation, which is what we just read in the 1755 Militia Act. It started with militia districts before it became counties. I'm through. Anybody else want to build on this? You want the military occupation. It's not racism.
Yeah,
definitely.
And I like how you always say that, Chief Alligator. Military occupation, not racism. You're looking at it. We're looking at it right now.
Right.
Counties and then broken down into its own sectors. With my military service, this was like, the provinces we had the jurisdiction in. We could go here and not there. Well, wow, this is public information.
Yep.
Right.
See, they even got names for them. Thunderbolt. Even got names for certain of them,
Yeah.
and some are unorganized territories, so they don't have any, I would say,
Wow.
Out there.
actual militia in that area. But
Mhm.
yeah, you can
But
find
wow, yeah.
this everywhere. You can find this
President
in
could
any.
call District 7 out of Georgia.
Mhm.
I wonder if you can go to the organized territory and create your own militia.
Who would you answer to? Who you would call to? Probably the governor.
Mm.
Well, you won't be able to create your own militia. How would that happen?
No, I don't even know.
There's no war. They're like, all right, here's some resources to fight us back. That ain't happening.
And I'm
We just have
wondering,
to
what do
bring
those
our own
numbers
stuff.
represent? The number of militiamen. What do you know what those numbers represent?
That I don't know, but what we do know is there's two jurisdictions. We know that there's a militia jurisdiction, just in case things hit the fan. And we also know that there's a commerce jurisdiction, which is what we're always taught, county, city, but underneath that. So, and the reason why this is important and the reason why we can have these kind of discussions is because of 2020. So when you saw all the protests last year after George Floyd's death, and you saw the radical European getting tired of seeing the protests, and they started talking about they're going to defend the businesses. What you saw was these sleeper cells in different states. You saw those militia personnel starting to wake up. This is why knowing American history is important, because you can navigate. See, there's no reason to get emotional from my standpoint, because I know what I'm looking at and I know what I hear when I hear it, right? So when Donald Trump said stand back and stand by, okay, that just told me put the stick in the vehicle.
Yep. Even I think it was
You
one
on
point.
mute, you on mute, Chief Blackcoat.
At all times, we'll just keep it close by.
Definitely. I think even out there in Seattle, they even had a point where they were saying people in like riot gear or some that weren't identified as police or National Guard were taking people in vans and taking them. Now you can understand, okay, that was probably through a call from the president to make sure they
Right.
secure that area. Because he said, if you either you get it under control or I will.
Mm-hmm.
He contacted who he needed to contact, the militia, and they got stuff done according to how we just saw within the Constitution.
Wow.
Does anybody still, and again, this is for the world, does anybody still believe that we're not under military occupation? After reading the 1755 Militia Act, tying it into Article 2, Section 2 of the Constitution, then tying it into the Second Amendment for the Bill of Rights, which gives the militia the right to bear arms, not you, and then looking at the militia map for whatever state you live in, do you still believe you're not under military occupation?
No.
It all adds up. It all makes sense now.
Yeah, I mean, you got it right here, Georgia General Militia Districts, and like you said, it's broken down into two jurisdictions, commerce and militia districts.
Wow.
And when we look at our structure, or when we look at their structure, again, it just makes sense. Why do cops treat certain individuals certain ways?
Mm-hmm.
Why? You can go all day, but yeah, it makes sense. And then again, we're looking at public information right now, general militia districts. We have. Why wasn't this taught in high school? Why aren't we aware of this?
Why isn't this in
Why are we aware of
U.S.
this?
government?
Right.
It's part
Right.
of your branches. But you are
Exactly.
actually right.
Exactly.
Perfect. Now everything you start to wake up out of the matrix once you see certain things.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping, our viewers, our people are tuning in because this is important information. This will take off the emotion out of it and actually realize what's going on and start planning accordingly.
Right. Exactly.
Can we, if y'all don't mind, we did go a little bit over, but that I think we can all agree that was necessary. Chief Quietwater, can you drop these links? Or
yes, I will.
Chief Biko, can you send her these links so she can add them to this video when we upload? That way people can start to understand what's going on with us as a group of people. And if I can, my last statement would be, the only way to solve that problem is to reverse engineer it. without a defense, without prisoners of war organizing with arms, you're not going to get out of this because you're under military occupation. You can't march your way out of this. You can't vote your way out of this. You can't pray your way out of this.
100% correct. 100% correct.
So we'll shut it down. Does anybody, we went a little over today, but I think it's all in good. Chief Biko, you got it. Go ahead and run the clock out.
All right. Go ahead and let me see. Do you have the stop? Because I don't think I can stop the recording or anything.
Yeah, I can shut it down. Nobody else wants to share anything before we shut it down?
Oh,
And we said it. I think next class is going to be very interesting now that we got that truth out there. And now we're just about to get deeper and deeper.
Oh, I will say this is why, well, the importance of, like you said, having a militia, having your arms, having people ready and willing to defend yourselves is necessary. We today, 1 year anniversary from Louisville. Pretty much that's how a lot of us on this channel came together. Came
right.
together for a common cause. We understood what was going on, and we understood what needed to happen. So reading what we just read over through the Militia Act, the Constitution, Bill of Rights, it's a necessity for that to happen, for us to have
Absolutely.
that,
I agree.
especially as
Absolutely.
a people. We've just seen it's a necessity for nation building. They
Mhm.
1755, there was no United States. So they needed that in order for it to become a United States. So if we want something as a nation, this is a key cog in what we need as a nation builder.
Mhm. And it has to start somewhere, just like we pointed out in the information that we read tonight, is that they didn't really have a definitive plan. They were just kind of getting things together, putting together checks and balances, because they didn't necessarily have that. But yeah, just learning how to build as we go. We may not have it all together right now, but just learning kind of as we go and building from there.
Take a province. They had a province. When you think of province, you could think as small as a state. Think as
Exactly.
small as a county, a town. Start somewhere.
Right.
I'll do the I'll do the inventor for next week. Any other volunteers for any readings?
I got the Maroon historical points.
I got the legal definitions and quote.
I got the quote.
Or
Okay.
Yeah, I'll get the quote.
So we just need steps. Anybody want to read the steps?
I'll do the steps.
Yeah.
Okay. And next week is going to be what everybody's waiting on. We're going to get into the first treaty of the first Seminole War. So the foundation's been laid, and we'll see y'all next week. We will get into the first treaty of the first Seminole War.